my mom said. "What were you going to do, buy yourself a cake?" Dad chimed in, stating the family needed it more after $69,000 disappeared from my account. That night, I canceled the mortgage and watched them panic as everything fell apart. Hey Reddit, I'm Tessa, and I turned 26 on the morning I found out my entire savings, $69,000, had vanished. I was still in bed, half awake, phone in hand, planning to treat myself to an expensive croissant and enjoy a quiet day free from work messages. I opened my banking app as usual, not expecting anything odd, just a habit I'd developed since my first part-time job at 17. Check your money, stay aware, keep grounded. But what I saw wasn't my normal reassuring balance. It was blank, zero. A void where $69,000 had been just a day before. At first, I thought it might be a glitch. I rubbed my eyes, restarted the app, switched to my computer, but no matter where I looked, the numbers stayed the same, gone. My savings account, my checking account, even the emergency fund I had tucked away in a separate folder labeled "break only in case of apocalypse." Every cent drained. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake, my throat tightening. I wasn't rich. That money wasn't luxury. It was essential. It was the result of 4 years of hard work, skipping vacations, driving an old car, and eating canned soup 3 nights a week. I worked full-time in IT and freelanced on weekends just to build that cushion. I had no debt, no rich relatives, no financial safety net. That $69,000 was everything, the thing keeping me from disaster. And now it was gone. I scrambled through my transaction history, scanning the outgoing transfers. There it was, 4 large transactions, all made within the last 72 hours, each one going to a bank account I vaguely recognized. My heart sank as I realized it was an old joint account I had opened at 18 when I started college and needed a place to deposit my part-time paychecks. I had added my parents as co-owners in case I needed help managing things, apparently forgetting to remove them later. They had access, and now they had everything. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. Then a hot feeling of anger and betrayal rose in my chest, sharp enough to make my eyes sting. I didn't text or call. I threw on jeans, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to my parents' house like a woman possessed. All the way there, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down, I already knew better. They lived 25 minutes away in the house I helped them refinance 3 years ago. I co-signed the mortgage, covered the closing costs, and never saw a cent back. I didn't mind it at the time. They were my family. They promised they'd pay me back, but they never did. When I walked into their house, I didn't have to say a word. They were in the kitchen mid-breakfast. My mom was sipping coffee and reading something on her tablet. My dad was buttering toast, and my younger brother Kyle was passed out on the couch, mouth open, controller still in hand from whatever game he had fallen asleep playing. They looked up as if I had just arrived for Sunday brunch. My voice was calm, too calm in hindsight. "Where's my money?" Mom blinked, confused for half a second before giving a dry laugh as if I had asked something silly. "Oh, honey," she said, "you're being dramatic. What were you going to do, buy yourself a cake?" My dad didn't even look up. "The family needed it more," he said, as if that explained everything. I stared at them, waiting for something. Anything that indicated I was wrong, that it wasn't intentional, that they felt remorse. But they didn't even pretend to be sorry. They acted like they had every right. I was shaking but didn't scream or cry. I just walked out. The drive home felt surreal, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly they went numb. The rage came later. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, focused kind that settles deep in your bones and suddenly makes everything terrifyingly clear. They saw me as their retirement plan. My mom had never held a job for more than 6 months. My dad had been in and out of construction jobs most of his life, always blaming the economy when he got fired. Kyle was 24, still figuring things out, spending more time watching Twitch than working. And me? I had worked every day since I was 16, paid my way through school, lived in a tiny apartment, never once asking them for help. Yet they had no issue draining me dry without a word. That night, I sat at my laptop and opened every financial document I had. I reviewed the mortgage agreement for their house from 3 years ago. They were in deep debt and begged me to help refinance because they couldn't qualify for a loan. So, I co-signed and contributed most of the down payment. At the time, I told myself it was temporary, that I'd remove my name later. Family came first. What a fool I had been. The house was still partly in my name, and the payments were being made automatically through a joint setup I had never fully undone, just like the account they had emptied. So I made some calls. I froze the old bank accounts, flagged the transactions as unauthorized, scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, and then contacted the mortgage company to tell them I wanted out. When they informed me my name was still on the deed, my stomach turned. But then it flipped again when they said it meant I could force a sale or reclaim full ownership. I had a legal foothold. They thought they had taken everything, but they forgot they were still living under a roof I had helped build, and I was done being the one who sacrificed everything while they laughed behind my back. I didn't sleep that night, not from panic or regret. That part of me had burned out. I stayed up because I was too focused, too awake. The betrayal hadn't broken me. It had clarified everything. By morning, I had already started untangling every connection to them. My lawyer agreed we had a solid case. I had proof of unauthorized access to my funds, a trail of transactions, and most importantly, I had legal standing on the house. We began the process to dissolve co-ownership and reclaim full control of the property. I wasn't trying to destroy them. I just wanted distance, control, and peace. Things I had never had while constantly giving to those who only knew how to take. Within 2 days of sending the formal notice, my parents responded, not with humility or denial, but with rage. My mom left a long voicemail, sobbing about how I was succeeding against the people who raised me. She said I was turning my back on my family, throwing them to the wolves. She ended with, "I should have let you drop out of college when you wanted to. This is what happens when kids get too big for their britches." My dad emailed me a list of expenses they felt justified the money they took. Things like food while visiting me in college, emotional support during my breakup, and my personal favorite, life coaching from your father. I didn't reply. I sent it all to my lawyer. But they didn't stop there. A week later, they filed what I can only describe as a pathetic excuse for a lawsuit, demanding compensation for emotional damages, wrongful eviction, and intentional family sabotage. I didn't need to panic. My lawyer laughed the moment he saw it. They had no case, no standing. What they did have was a sense of entitlement so thick it blinded them to how legally screwed they were. Still, we couldn't officially reclaim the home until the case was dismissed, which gave them just enough time to retaliate in the only way they knew: childish, destructive behavior. When we finally gained access to the property for inspection, I walked in and froze in the entryway. Trash everywhere, food left to rot, red wine spilled on the living room carpet, and kitchen cabinet doors ripped off their hinges. Marker scribbles on the wall read, "You can buy a house, but you'll never buy a family." They knew they were leaving, so they made sure to leave their mark. I stood there amidst the mess and filth, the last tantrum of a selfish family, and I didn't cry. I took photos, every scratch, every stain, all of it. They had finally shown me exactly who they were. My lawyer added property damage to the countersuit. The court dismissed their case quickly. The judge didn't even consider the idea that I had caused them harm. Their attempt to manipulate the system collapsed like everything else they built, weak, unstable, and fake. The countersuit moved forward. It's strange. I didn't even care much about the money at that point. Sure, I wanted back what they took, but more than that, I wanted clarity. I needed it documented that what they did was wrong. I didn't need them to apologize. I just needed to know I hadn't imagined the betrayal. Kyle reached out about a week after the hearing. He didn't acknowledge the lawsuit, just messaged me as if nothing had happened, asking for $1,000 for a fresh start and promising he was serious about turning things around. I didn't block him or argue. I just left the message on read and moved on. The house took about 6 weeks to repair. I hired a team, oversaw everything, and listed it on the rental market. It was quickly snatched up by a couple in their 30s with a toddler and another on the way. They had been priced out of their previous rental and were desperate for stability. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same roof my parents had poisoned with resentment would now shelter a real family, one that appreciated it. On the day I handed them the keys, I stood in the empty living room for a moment. The walls had been repainted, the carpets replaced, and the wine stain was long gone. There was nothing left of them, no trace. I smiled, not out of spite, but out of peace. I hadn't won by humiliating them. I had won by removing them from my life and finally understanding that love without boundaries isn't love. It's servitude. They had fed off my guilt and called it connection. They had stolen from me and called it family. But I had stopped them. I had stood up, not just legally, but emotionally. I no longer needed their approval, their fake affection, or their excuses. A few days after the renters moved in, I received one last letter from my mom, with no return address. It was a final guilt trip filled with handwritten phrases like, "You'll regret this when we're gone," and "We were just trying to survive." Inside was a check for $200, maybe a twisted joke, maybe her version of a conscience. Either way, I tore it in half and tossed it in the trash without hesitation. I never heard from them again. Today, my finances are stable. The rent covers my monthly expenses, and the legal judgment I won from the countersuit helped me rebuild my emergency fund. I live in a small apartment with no roommates, no shared accounts, no family group chats filled with fake affection. I still don't spend extravagantly. I still drive my old car. But now every dollar I save belongs to me, and every ounce of peace I have, I earned that too. So no, I didn't get a cake on my birthday, but I got something sweeter.